Basically, like I mentioned, all these 5 strategic areas are areas that you will find in the SAPZ, and this will be discussed as we go along. Basically, now honing on to the Feed Africa strategy, where this SAPZ is anchored. It's a strategy for Africa's agriculture transformation, and it's about Africa achieving self-sufficiency and market surplus in 18 priority commodity value chains across 5 ecological zones. And there's different flagship programs that the bank has to ensure that we achieve this agriculture transformation. And so the overarching goals of this Feed Africa strategy are basically contributing to the end of extreme hunger and poverty, malnutrition, becoming a net exporter of agriculture commodities, and moving to key agriculture value chains. So basically, this slide still talks about the goals, targets, and the status of the Feed Africa strategy. But basically, by 2025, the strategy looks at lifting 130 million people out of extreme poverty, achieving zero hunger and malnutrition, and then ensuring that Africa's net balance is zero, trade balance, and then increasing Africa's share of market value for processed commodities by 40% at least. So the share of global agribusiness is huge, as has been emphasized by previous speakers. I'll give an example of some of the opportunities. If you look at the next 2 to 3 years in Nigeria, for example, we are looking at we're working with the Nigerian government to assist them to develop 8 SAPZs in the next 2 to 3 years. And if you look at globally, the agri-food industry is the largest subsector of manufacturing industries. It's even larger than automobiles, IT, iron and steel. And in 2018, the industry employed 40 million people. So it's a very large industry. So when you look at the special agro-processing zones, the key goals and outcome of these is to enhance productivity, to reduce post-harvest losses, to reduce the cost of operations, through shared facilities and economies of scales that come from agglomeration, to increase value addition in agricultural produce. And then the key outcomes of this SAPZ are basically to reduce food on imports, just like the Feed Africa strategy mentions, to assure food security, nutrition at low and stable prices in country, to boost revenue and agriculture exports, basically to boost rural livelihoods and reduce the rural-urban drift that we experience in Africa. It's one of the challenges Africa faces. Create sustainable jobs, especially for the youth. Revival of stranded public and private sector funded assets. So this is something that we see a lot of in Africa. We have a lot of brownfield SAPZs that we're looking at. So that's our strategy, looking for low-hanging fruit, looking for initiatives that have been begun and have been abandoned, and we build on that to accelerate the implementation of the program. So now just quickly, what are special agro-industrial processing zones for the purpose of those who are not very familiar with the term? So basically, these are shared facilities to enable agriculture producers, processors, aggregators, and distributors to operate in the same vicinity, thereby reducing transaction costs and sharing business development services. This ultimately increases productivity and competitiveness. So the government typically, so we look at this being a government-enabled, private sector-led project. The government would bring in adequate infrastructure, energy, water, roads, and ICT, also waste treatment plants and so on, to rural areas of high agriculture potential, and thereby attract private investment into the area. So an SAPZ, an agro-industrial hub, within the SAPZ would be a centrally managed tract of land developed and dedicated to supporting firms and other stakeholders engaged in agro-processing. So the ownership and management of the hub is usually controlled by a dedicated independent entity, often in a PPP arrangement with the government. So this is a quick schematic diagram of what an agro-industrial processing hub looks like. As you can see, it's right in the center, in the middle of where production happens. And outside of this processing hub, you can see production is happening, and we've got the agriculture transformation centers clustered around it. I'll talk about that in another slide, just to explain what that is a little bit. So within the agro-processing hub, there's a lot of industries that set up in there to do the value addition of these value chains that are processed within the area. And then you've got agro-allied industries also within that. So packaging, research and development also going on, greenhouses also around in the area, demo farms, terminal markets, logistics, all that will be within the agro-processing hub vicinity. Also, other agro-allied industries will set up in that. So just again, to a different way of presenting the components of the SAPZ. As you can see, it's an end-to-end solution to agriculture value chains. So you've got inputs coming in from the production, inputs coming in to assist the farmers in production. So you've got farm credit, improved seeds, irrigation, extension services, and this leads to production and productivity at the farm level, which through our agriculture transformation centers, which also act as aggregation centers, pre-processing, storage, sorting, grading for improved shelf life to reduce post-harvest losses happens at the ATC level. This leads then to processing and distribution at the agro-processing hub level. And this then is further taken to different markets, domestic and foreign. And like I've mentioned, I've talked about the ATC, so I'll just quickly skim through this. It's basically set deep within the production area, and it serves as an area which provides inputs to the smallholder farmers and everybody involved in production around there. So you've got your agri-clinics, farm credits, collection centers, tractor hire, and other inputs that are provided to the smallholder farmers. And then also it serves as aggregation center for the outputs that come out from there, and a primary handling facility of the produce in the area. So just quickly, some key lessons learned. So site and commodity choice are based on competitive advantage, and then in enhancing productivity to guarantee supply of raw materials to the processing plants that sets up within the industrial hubs. And like I mentioned, again, I'll reiterate, it must be public enabled, but private sector led. And then affordable financing is also critical for all the players across the entire value chain. Prof had already touched on this, so I'll quickly move on. There's basically the footprint of SAPZs is across 18 regional member countries now. The bank is working to support different countries to put the SAPZ in practice. So just quickly, just to talk about this, because it gives a bit of a background to what I'll be talking to next. It essentially has three broad components. One is supporting the development of enabling infrastructure and the management of agro-industrial zones. And then the second component normally that the bank will finance is enhancing agriculture production and productivity in proximity to the agro-industrial hubs. So this is very important. As we mentioned, it it feeds into what is being produced at the agro-industrial hub level. And then also institutional capacity development, project coordination and management. I'll just skip through this slide. So now I'll just go to my key slides for the day: opportunities for partnership and cooperation in PPPs and direct investment opportunities. Basically, Korean companies could come in at various levels. Korea as a country also could come in to support this initiative at various levels. So providing market linkages is one of them. So a market that is ready to buy what is being produced in Africa is an area of cooperation and partnership. End-to-end financing solutions across the entire value chain, like I mentioned, co-financing of SAPZs with the government, with the various DFIs that are financing, us being one of them. And then financing smallholder farmers, financing the commercial farmers, finance to SMEs, and so on. Sorry, I repeated smallholder farmers. And then zone construction and facility management. So with a track record and experience of Korean firms, there's an opportunity there. So for Korean firms to come in. Also equipment supply at the construction phase, because Korea has industry leadership in this type of initiative. So we expect knowledge transfer, equipment supply, and so on to be something that Korea would bring to the table in this. And then in providing an enabling environment, again, knowledge transfer on how to create an enabling environment and crowding in private sector into agro-processing. Because when you look at the ease of doing business criteria, Korea is ranked very highly. It's in the top 5. So again, jointly or directly through joint ventures and so on, processing, Korea would definitely bring in industry leadership in this. Production, also large-scale integrated farming and different value chains. This is an area where Korea would add value. So again, this slide, yes, sir.
Sorry,
it's my last slide. Yes, I'm done.
Okay, please wrap up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so basically, as you can see, there are different opportunities, like I mentioned earlier broadly, but this slide is available also on the website. And my key messages, just my last key messages in 30 seconds. Partnership with the African Development Bank to transform Africa's agriculture landscape is critical, and the time to do that is now. We are willing to discuss this further. And then Korea being a guru in agribusiness, this is time to transfer knowledge and transform the African landscape. Other regions in the world are already working with us to support this SAPZ program, and we want to see Korea come in also and take up leadership in this area, because we believe Korea should be in the forefront of this agenda. Thank you.